and good evening. When we talk about Rissho Kosei-kai in the United States, we cannot miss this person about all the histories of spreading the Dharma in the United States, and also all the experiences, the Japanese way, American way, and also the study, the textbook, translation, each word, phrase, the chapters. And she has been contributing her all the effort to make it easier for all the American people, including, of course, English-speaking European people, to understand the Buddhism and also heart and the spirit of Rissho Kosei-kai. Now you know who I'm talking about. Please welcome Reverend Kris Ladusau from Oklahoma.
Thank you very much. It's lovely to see everyone. I want to thank Arkina for this opportunity to present this morning to speak about my path to becoming a Reverend for Rissho Kosei-kai. It was a little bit unique, so maybe that's why the interest in that. But I'm happy to talk about it with you. So the name of this PowerPoint that we're going to look at is called Bridging Continents. So I understand what we're going for on that one. And so I added underneath there, becoming a Reverend, which I believe is an ongoing process. I don't think you ever totally arrive. I think it's something that it is an ongoing process and probably a never-ending process. So just to acknowledge that also. Next slide, please. I want to mention before we talk about this slide that I never planned on becoming a Buddhist Reverend. It wasn't anything that was in my life plan. I wasn't aware of that even being a possibility. So I grew up in a small town in Oklahoma, and I was raised Methodist Church, which is a Christian denomination. Had a good experience in that. And as I went ahead and moved through my life, I was exposed to Buddhism when I was in college. Actually, I was getting a degree in violin performance in university. And at that time, I started practicing martial arts, Japanese martial arts. So there was a component of Zen meditation that was introduced to me at that time in my life. And I liked that a lot. So I simply added that on to my spirituality at that point. I think sometimes when I speak to university classes, I jokingly refer to myself as a Buddhist because I don't think you actually give up anything. I just think we add to it. So started out as Methodist and then became Buddhist. But anyway, just to let you know that the Zen influence was actually while I was in college. So graduated and started working in the world. And I continued to study martial arts and to eventually teach. And then I began to work for a living for a while, for 12 years with oil companies. And I was a cartographer, which meant drawing maps, types of maps. And I enjoyed that very much. And then I went on to become a massage therapist, and I had a 20-year career doing that. And then I taught that also for 7 years to give back for the opportunity that I had had to learn from very good teachers. And then I began to really lean into the study and practice of Buddhism. And so I wanted to learn as much as I could about that and to share it with others. So that's how I got to where I am now, is because I began to study and practice Buddhism and had a vehicle to be able to share that information with others. So I was very happy to study and practice and share. So when I learned about Rissho Kosei-kai, I learned that there were 2 avenues for possible paths to become a Reverend in the organization. This is what was shared with me a long, long time ago. One of them was to attend Gakurin in Tokyo, which is like the seminary, and to begin working for Rissho Kosei-kai. And there was many different avenues through that path of attaining experience and growing and learning and traveling and things like that. So that was the kind of the go-to, was to begin with the Gakurin training in Tokyo, and then work through the opportunities that RK provided for growth. The second one would be to be designated to take care of an existing RK group and gain practical experience through continued responsibility of that Dharma assignment. So I think this part came into play when Rissho Kosei-kai began to grow at an astounding rate. And they really had so many people coming in and needed leaders, and they had groups, and they kind of grandfathered people into positions because of necessity. It was the impression that I got. So I think that became very important to be able to access that position from that way also, in addition to the original path. Next slide, please. I'd like to give a little bit of background for the Oklahoma group in case some of you aren't familiar with it. The Japanese ladies here in Oklahoma began meeting in leaders' homes. I think it was about 1975. I know it was the second half of the 70s anyway. We were technically a branch office under Los Angeles and remained that way until we became a kyokai ourselves. So the Japanese ladies were meeting in the Shibucho's home for many, many years. The next thing I want to mention is a friend of mine named Machiko, and she was the one that first invited me to an Obon service. My mother had died, and in 1984, she invited me to a memorial service at the home of the Shibucho. She knew that I liked Japanese food and Japanese people, and I had been involved in Japanese martial arts, so she knew I was very comfortable in that setting, and she invited me to my first Rissho Kosei-kai meeting. And then I began to attend meetings when my work schedule allowed, and became a member. And later, after a while, Shibucho Kiko Scott asked if I would help her with a group in the future. And I seriously considered it, and I said yes. I also met Yasko Hildebrand at that time. And she and I both shared a dream of someday having a facility in Oklahoma. And then we began to expand the meetings to include American members, and Kim Miller was the first one, first other American involved in this, besides myself. And we ended up having meetings in English and in Japanese, both. And that, at that point, the group began to grow a little bit. And I eventually submitted a design and requested permission to Tokyo for building a Dharma center here in Oklahoma. The construction was completed and the facility was dedicated in 2001. And Reverend Yasko Hildebrand became the first Reverend of the Oklahoma Kyokai. And then I became Reverend in 2009. And we celebrated our 20th anniversary on July 4th of 2021. Next slide, please. So my interest was to learn the Buddha Dharma and the teachings of RK simply so I could share them with others. I was always glad to attend trainings because I could pass that information on to Oklahoma members. Rissho Kosei-kai provided wonderful continuing education on a regular basis for overseas leaders. I had some great experiences attending some meetings in Japan, and representatives were there from all the different countries. And that was a wonderful, wonderful experience for me. And I so much appreciate the training that was provided. As far as my own timeline on this, I'll let you know that I received Gohonzon in 1995. I received Dharma Teacher in 2000. I received Goshiko Sonjin in 2004 and received Shunin in 2005. I did not have language skills to attend Gakurin. I didn't realize that they were interested in putting me into a reverend's position. So I never even thought about it because I knew that I would not be able to attend Gakurin for one thing. But they ended up creating an extra training program for me that was translated into English, and deep thanks to all of the people who helped do the translation for me, because it was it was a long program. It lasted several months and was extremely comprehensive. I'm really eternally grateful for that opportunity. Next slide, please. So the components of the Tokyo training, just to give you an outline of what was involved, every morning at 6 a.m., I chanted the Lotus Sutra in co-founder's home. And if you've been to Tokyo, the old headquarters area, there's the old dojo there, and then next to it was a small home, and that was her one of her homes. And that's where we chanted every morning. And I had people from the RKI office doing that, rotating and doing that with me every morning at 6 a.m. So that was a very profound practice for me. Also, I had the opportunity to do actual church visitations. Some of the churches were Fuchu, Shimodate, Mitsuyama, Senshu, Funabashi, Nerima, Fukui, Kyoto. All of those locations that I visited, I shadowed teachers and watched them and listened to their lectures and also their hozas with the leaders in those locations. And I was asked to give short speeches at all of those churches that I visited. I had wonderful opportunities to learn from teachers. Some of them were Reverend Kikuchi, Reverend Norio Sakai, who sadly just passed away recently, Reverend Kuboki, and I shadowed them at these locations and listened to how they talked to the members and leadership in those locations. It was really wonderful to be able to do that. I also had a series of lectures with teachers and reverends at headquarters. I had four lectures with Dr. Shinozaki, 4 lectures with Dr. Reeves, 3 with Reverend Sakai, 2 with Reverend Hasagawa, Reverend Nezu, who has passed away also, Reverend Kotaro Suzuki, who was at Nerima at that time, had extensive time with him, Reverend Kawamoto, and this is the father of Reverend Kawamoto that most of us know. It's his father who had a session with me on using the 4 Noble Truths for Hosa facilitation. Reverend Matsubara, she was wonderful, specializing in Hosa. And she has passed away also, but I had the opportunity to, I think 2 times, to listen to her guidance in Hosa, which was wonderful. There was also special training in Kompon Bukyo, or basic Buddhism, of course, training and ritual, the Dharani, Toban, Hosa, mission activities. And then I had an unbelievable experience of doing misogi, or water purification training at Tsubaki Shrine, and that was for almost a week, every day in the morning, having that at 6 a.m. Then there was a pilgrimage. This was through the time that I was actually staying at Nerima Kyokai. We had a pilgrimage to Shichiminzan, Mount Minobu, and Shishinkaku. And I was not able to climb the mountain on that one. I had doctor's orders not to climb because my knees were not very good. So I was part of the second group that went, and that was a kind of a support group for the ones that were climbing. And then we also had some wonderful experiences at all 3 of these places. So that was great. That was a great experience. Also, sutra calligraphy practice was done, and that, of course, we know as one of the practices of a Dharma teacher is to copy the sutra. So that was wonderful to do. I had the opportunity to visit the Kosei Cemetery, which provided some very unique experiences. And maybe sometime we can talk about that. Also, I was helping with the Oishiki Parade there in Tokyo. And before I left to go back to the US, I had a private session with President Iwano, and I asked him for guidance as I was heading back to the United States. And his guidance to me was share the joy of the teachings. And so I tried to do that to my best ability. Next slide, please. So at the after the 2005 training in Tokyo, I was asked to make a report. So I created a report and turned it in. And at the beginning of the report, this was my comment before the text began. I just thought I'd share it with you. This was a truly special time in my life to have the opportunity to focus all of my attention on attaining both knowledge and experience with the Buddha Dharma and the founder's teachings was a gift beyond compare. The following pages are a way of documenting my study for future use and training of leaders for Rissho Kosei-kai. Hopefully it will prove beneficial. What is not able to be written are the impressions that were left on my soul, the joy of the smiles of those who welcomed me into their hearts, the energy and beauty of Japan, and the pre-dawn prayers at a Shinto shrine accompanied by the distant sound of a bamboo flute. Next slide, please. This is a picture of me chanting in co-founder's home, and it's Reverend Hagiwara and Michio Kimie Hattori-san with me. And the RKI office rotated the people who would be with me each day so that they didn't have to miss work early in the morning every time. So the interesting thing about this picture, it was such an honor to be in her home. And the interesting thing about this picture, I think, is if you look over to the left in the picture that's on the wall, the ceiling lamp light is right over her heart. And so I thought that was very interesting. And that was something I didn't notice until a lot later, was that the light was over her heart, which I thought was significant. So thank you. Next slide. As far as Michibiki and Terori in America, next slide, please. I thought about this and I thought I'd just read something that I wrote a while back, which addresses how I perceive, how I approach sharing the teachings in the United States. And this is called Tending the Fire. Accepting the responsibility of maintaining the fire is a very important opportunity. In the fires of Native American ceremonies and sweat lodges, the one tending the fire is fulfilling a very sacred task. It was a cool, clear night. The fire was burning softly, but there was a need for it to be tended to, so I began the process. I gathered some wood, small twigs, medium branches, and large ones, and laid them on the ground at the edge of the fire. As I did this, I realized that I've always felt a connection to the elements and the wonders of nature. It was such a beautiful night, so quiet, peaceful. The air was rich with the smell of the earth and the sweetgrass and sage. This was such a special opportunity. Suddenly, I noticed someone there with me. I encouraged them to come up next to me and talk while I tended the fire. As we talked, I noticed they too were gazing into the fire. Quietly, I said, "It's beautiful, isn't it? So nice and warm." They whispered back, "Yes, it is wonderful." Then for a while, we stood next to each other in silence, focused on the sights, sounds and sights and smells of the fire. I consciously thought about what was needed to create a fire, the different components that must come together to make it happen. It's also interconnected. I turned my attention back to the person standing with me. I asked if they would mind tending to the fire for a moment while I prepared other things. They agreed and began to help me take care of the fire. When I returned, I noticed they had become thoughtfully immersed in the process. I smiled, knowing how much they also enjoyed the opportunity. As I stood next to them, we were both deeply connected to the fire, and I saw it for all its power and effect. We saw the ever-changing flames and the continuing creation of new sparks, a delight to watch, almost mesmerizing to be so close, the fire so vital. Together, we absorbed the heat of the flames and felt the warmth in our hearts and minds. Time disappeared. We were very comfortable just to be there, to be part of it all. Gradually, our awareness expanded to include the sky, the moon, and the stars, and the universe itself. So fantastic. We felt a profound appreciation for life and for this moment. Reflection was natural and welcome. What a wonderful gift. So this story expresses how I feel about sharing the Dharma with others. Next slide, please. When it comes to training American leaders. Next slide. This is another one that I wrote a while back that I think describes my take on that process. This is called stepping stones. Many years ago, when I was traveling in Japan, I had the opportunity to spend some time visiting very old and beautiful gardens. All of them had unique beauty, and I reflected on the considerable amount of thought, planning, and continual care that went into each one of them. One of the gardens incorporated a large pond of water in its design. Across the water were stepping stones that helped visitors cross to the other side safely and see the garden from a new and different perspective. As I took each step, I paused and took it all in, realizing how much I appreciated the thoughtfulness of the design and the master gardener who had created it. Years later, I could see a correlation to teaching the Dharma. As I traversed the Bodhisattva path, my teachers created stepping stones to guide me through my process. They gave me a nudge when I needed it, suggested practices, books to read, speeches to write, and opportunities to experience sharing the teaching with others. And although there were many times when I was a bit scared to go to the next step, I had full trust in my teachers, knowing that they too had been guided through the same process by those who came before them. I realized that without these stepping stones, I might be struggling inefficiently, sunk down in the water, trying to swim my way back to a better understanding on my own. I might get too tired, turn back, missing the opportunity to grow and perhaps never finding the new view and understanding that I was sincerely seeking. By making use of the stepping stones, I'm able to be sure-footed and maintain a perspective above the water. I can see where I've been and trust where I'm going. I can make faster progress on the path, resting periodically and appreciating the bigger view. When I became a teacher, I noticed myself incorporating the style of Dharma guidance I had received from my mentors. After carefully observing each individual in my Sangha and trying to grasp their abilities, energies, and depth of devotion, I became focused on trying to create the most efficient way for each of them to continue growing in their study and practice by pointing out the stepping stones. Next slide. In gratitude, I'd like to say it has been a tremendous honor to be a Reverend for Rissho Kosei-kai. I want to thank founder and co-founder, President Iwano and Kosho-sama, for creating and sustaining the Kosei-kai path to enlightenment for all of us. I express sincere gratitude to all RK Reverends and teachers that have given me guidance and support through this journey. And I thank all staff members of RKI and Arkina through the years. Their energy and commitment to helping all of us has been invaluable. Gratitude to all of my students who have been some of my best teachers. Any questions? Anybody there? Can't hear anything.
I just want to say thank you, Reverend Kris.
Yes, thank you.
I really enjoyed it very much, and knowing you personally as well. You do reach out. I like what you said about being at the fire. Come sit next to me. And when we had our moments there in Japan, and also whenever I get to meet you, all of your work with Rissho Kosei-kai, it's so wonderful.
Oh, thank you,
And it
Pearl.
really shows, yes. But yeah, you know, sharing the Dharma, it might be difficult, but if we have no fear, at least we are planting the seed in our own way. And that's what's need to be done. But
Yes.
I'm enjoying being here with you and everyone. And thank you so much for sharing all of your wonderful, wonderful experiences.
Thank
I
you.
love it.
And I
Thank you.
appreciate your efforts through the years and all the work that you have done also.
And I've learned from you a lot as well. I love you.
I'd like to make a comment. I appreciated your story about tending the fire and the stepping stones. That reminds me of a quality I appreciate about the Lotus Sutra, and that while the text is there, the language and the meaning of it are dynamic and living, and you can have so many people from different and varied experiences encounter it, and everybody gets something a little different from it and what they need, and that's illustrated in those two pieces you shared, not just in the writings but the moments together, and we can start to consider that in our life experiences with one another. So I see that play out a lot at the Dharma Center, and that you do an amazing job of using that insight and guiding us in Oklahoma City through the sutra and our lives.
Thank you,
You've been tremendously helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for all you
Appreciate you
do.
sharing today.
Sure.
I have a question then. Nobody.
Sure.
So you must have been, when you made that decision to become a minister or reverend. I mean, it's such a big responsibility. I'm sure there is a lot of inner battles going on within you and trying to figure out. I like to know that process, or what you were feeling, or were you scared, or how did you handle all those emotions?
When the topic was brought up, I actually said I can do this work without a title. I can still continue to share and do everything that I'm doing. I don't have to have a title. And they said, well, that's not how that's going to work. So it was kind of said, this is what we would like to do. And it was kind of like, just go with it. So I had to think about it, because it is a big responsibility. And by the time that this was recommended to me, I felt very comfortable with the idea of really focusing on this for the rest of my life. I really did. And so to me, it was important for them to be able to designate me, but I really did say I can do this, just to keep doing what I've been doing. And then they said, well, we would like to make you a reverend. I said, I'm honored for that, and I'm happy to do that. So it was kind of, I've been leaning in. Really, the best term that I can think of is leaning into it. And I've kind of been leaning into the work already for a while. And so it was a matter of graciously accepting the offer that was presented to me, and realizing that it was going to be wonderful, because that was a show of support for Rissho Kosei-kai for the work that I was doing, and that it was going to support me to support them. And I remember having a talk with Reverend Mizutani. So for those of you who know who Reverend Mizutani is, and he sat me down right after they made me a reverend. He said, I need to tell you about Buddha's rice. And so this is a story I'd never heard before. And he says, when you became employed through Rissho Kosei-kai, he said, you are receiving Buddha's rice. He said, never forget for a minute that is the Buddha's harvest that you're receiving. So the salary, the compensation financially for the position, he said, think about every person in Japan and all over the world that has gone up and dropped a coin in the donation box. That is Buddha's rice. So I thought that was a really great way to talk about that, and be grateful for that always. That answer your question, Amy?
Thank you.
Good morning, Reverend.
Good morning.
My name's Niji. I'm primarily online. When your Dharma Center was established, did you say that was 2001 or 2000?
Yeah, the group had been going for a while, but as far as moving from branch office under Los Angeles to being considered a Dharma Center or a Kyokai, at that point, the construction of the building was done and that was finished and dedicated in 2001.
So 2 quick questions. Certainly in 2001, the social environment in America was somewhat different than it is right now. And I was just wondering if you've experienced either surprising changes in the membership, or has it remained fairly constant, whether it's growing or leveled off, whatever it was. You know, if you had 900 members, do you have 912 or do you have 312? And also, have you been impacted by attitudes, social attitudes in your community or in your area? Certainly, I don't think Buddhists draw the ire of these newfound super dedicated Americans, but, you know, trying not to judge them, but understand them. But I wonder if, you know, anybody's run up to you and asked you, are you about to take Jesus as your Lord and Savior? You know, I found it very comfortable. I used to tell everybody, I'm by spiritual. Wait. You got to give it a pause, right? You got to wait one beat. Then you say by spiritual, and then it throws them, you know. And of course, so yeah, I was that way also for a while. I know I touched on my AME Zion background, and it was interesting what you said in your talk about, you know, you developed a good taste in your mouth for spiritual training, religious training. I meet people from other faiths, and, you know, it's like they were glad to get out of the Catholic school or the whatever. But I didn't find that, you know, and I've expressed to San Antonio often how I'm glad to have a church to go to on a Sunday morning and how much that fulfills a place in my life. So I guess I've kind of sprawled that into a couple of different things. But how's Oklahoma doing? And has your Buddhism drawn any increased negativity from our newfound mentality? And I'll just, last but not least, here's number 3 or 2A, whatever. Please tell us a little bit about your music. I know you've done, I didn't know you were also a kick butt martial art teacher, but I'll take that under consideration when I come to Oklahoma. And you can bet I'll be behaving correctly. But nevertheless, tell us about your music after you tell us about what it's like to be a Buddhist leader in Oklahoma.
Okay,
Thank
great
you,
question.
Reverend.
Sure, great questions. The attitudes in Oklahoma, for one thing, way back when we're talking about the beginning of all of this, Oklahoma is not known as a hotbed of Buddhism. And so we were introducing something that was relatively different from what else was happening in Oklahoma. In fact, some people are always amazed that we even have a Dharma Center in the middle of America in Oklahoma, because the predominant, the community is predominantly Christian. And we obviously have a great interfaith group there. We really do, with other people, but I'd say the majority is still, is Christian. And so it was an educational process in the community for us when we started out. And sometimes it was well received and sometimes it wasn't. And we've had some individual situations. I remember this was a long time ago, we had we were having a raffle to raise money for the church, and one of our teachers was he had a jujitsu martial arts school up in Edmond, which is just north side of Oklahoma City. And he took tickets up there to sell to anybody that wanted to buy tickets for the raffle, because we were raffling off a scooter. It was a really good raffle. And so he was offering tickets for people, and some of the parents of his students, kids' students, said, "What's the raffle for? Or what's it going to?" And he said, "My Buddhist, Buddhist church." And they pulled their kids out of his school because they were really strongly Christian and they didn't know he was Buddhist, and they didn't want to have anything associated, didn't want him teaching their kids. So there was some really hardcore responses sometimes, but there was also some really good responses to us being in the community. And we've done what we can as far as educating in the community. And I try every chance I get to be available to talk about Buddhism, whether it's in high school classes or university classes. And Dave and Kris and some of the other people also help teach these classes. And they ask us to come in and talk about Buddhism. And it's a little different because most people expect on a lecture for Buddhism, they would expect an Asian person to be there. But the teachers have often said they appreciate being able to have someone who was raised in America to talk to Americans about this. And because I had had both the Christian experience and Buddhism, I was bilingual when I could talk to them about that, because the questions they would ask, I could see both sides of that and share that with them. So I've done as much as I can through the years to help educate the community on Buddhism so that they wouldn't be frightened of it, and would understand that there are some similarities to the two spiritual paths. So the attitudes in Oklahoma, I think, have improved a lot through the years. I can't say that it's all because of the educational things that we have done, but I know that those help. And so just in the fact that Buddhism is becoming more known in the United States than it used to be also. You got to remember, it hasn't been in the US very long. So it's going to be a while before it's probably going to be as accepted as easily as some other things. So the attitudes in Oklahoma have definitely gotten better. And I think it's because of a broad spectrum of improvement of understanding of the religion itself. And as far as the growth goes, Oklahoma is a very unique place. We're doing okay. For being in the middle of Oklahoma, the growth has gone up and down minorly through the years, and I attribute that to the fact that we've got a major highway running north and south through Oklahoma, and one running east and west, and it's a what I call a transitory state. There's people who move to Oklahoma for 3 years with their job, and then they move out again. They leave in 3 years. So we've constantly experienced this flux in and out of people moving into Oklahoma, leaving Oklahoma, moving in, leaving. So there's this kind of a pattern in the flow and the membership and the attendance because of that. But we're still strong. Yeah, we're not huge numbers, and I don't know that we will ever be huge numbers because of where we are. But I really do feel like we've got a good core community of practitioners, and the depth of their understanding continues to deepen and grow and learn. And it's just been a privilege to be part of it because it's caused me to grow and give me the opportunity to deepen in my understanding too at the same time. So there's fluctuation in the growth, but it's not a huge fluctuation. It's just minorly, and people moving in and moving out is part of that. And then as far as the music goes, I played, my major instrument was violin in college. And so I played professionally for a long time. And in fact, the last time I played was a string quartet when we opened the Dharma Center in 2001. So, but a couple of years ago, I had a thought about, since I was raised Christian, Christians do music really well. And in Buddhism, we just didn't have that library of music that the Christians have accumulated through years and years. And so I got to thinking about Buddhism and music. And so a couple of years ago, I asked a friend of mine who I went to college with, who was also in music, if she would do a project with me. And I said, what I'm interested in doing is creating 5 or 6 songs that are really distinctively different styles of music, but yet for each of them to have a Buddhist theme or some Buddhist text or something that would connect Buddhism with some contemporary music. And so we created a CD just for fun, and there was a choir piece on there. There was a children's song. There was a song that was Native American sounding. There was some two that were kind of what I consider modern, like spoken, not rap, but kind of a spoken thing. And then also one that was just chanting, more like a chanting, and it had different languages in there too, chanting the 3 treasures. And so it was a wonderful opportunity to kind of expand and create some, use the creative process to create some music that would be considered Buddhist flavored. So it was fun to be able to do that.
Let me quickly add, is that last CD like online YouTube? But like I saw some parts of it, but I haven't been able to sit with it, and I would like to do so.
You can access it through
It is on our YouTube channel.
yeah, you can access it that way. I think it's on Spotify if you want to do it that way. There's also, and Kris, thank you for mentioning that. There's also, we've done music videos for a couple of the songs, and those are on our website. If you want to take a peek at those were fun to do too. And we've got one more to go. We're getting ready to fix up one more with the 3 treasures information, and we'll do a video for that.
Thank you, Niji, for your questions. And thank you, Reverend Kris.
Sure.
And now I'm going to pass the mic to Reverend Yoshizawa to wrap it up.
Okay, well, thank you very much, everyone, for the very first session of this year 2023, the Transatlantic Sangha. And it's appropriate to have Reverend Kris from Oklahoma to be the very first one to present for us. So why don't we have applause to everyone, to Kris. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you to all the attendees today. And we will have continuous transatlantic Sangha bi-weekly. So please do not miss that Thursday, the following next week. Once again, thank you very much, everyone, and Reverend Kris. And that will close for today. I'll pass the mic to Amy-san.
Okay, thank you very much, Reverend. The next gathering is the 26th, January 26th, with I think Reverend Mizumo will present. We will be presenting about midwinter recitation. So let's look forward to that, and we'll close with the chanting of the Odaimoku 3 times. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Eternal Buddha Shakyamuni, founder Nikkyo Niwano, thank you very much. President Nichiko Niwano, thank you very much. Reverend Kris, thank you very much. And everyone, thank you very much.
Amy, thank you for your tech help today.
You're welcome. See you in 2 weeks.
Thanks so much.
Everybody,
Thank you, Reverend Chris. Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you.
thank
Thank
you.
you. Bye-bye.
Oh, have a good day. Bye.